Welcome to episode 33 of From the Shed End podcast with myself, T Dot. As always, I'm joined with Theo. How you doing?
Yeah, good. It was a great weekend to be a Chelsea fan. So even though it's Monday, I'm still in a good mood. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, definitely. And no better place to start than St. Reece James's Park. Um, Brilliant performance. Obviously, he was missing Mason Mount, which I think we were sort of hoping he was going to start and, part of the game as well, but didn't seem to miss him. What was your thoughts on the first half?
Yeah, I mean, when I didn't see his name on the team sheet, I was a bit concerned because we know how important Mount is. I think he had to go back to London the night before because he was ill or something like that. But first half, I thought it was a typical Chelsea performance at Newcastle, quite slow. We found it quite hard to break Newcastle down. I thought that Hakim Ziyech, if this will make sense to anyone who watched the game, was our best player in the first half, but also our worst player, if that makes sense. He took it brilliantly. He finished there was an opportunity off really well, but it was offside. He missed the sitter. He hit the post early off in the first half, so he didn't really, he was kind of a focal point in that first half, but also he should have been scoring. He should have scored that easy chance. And that's kind of what we get with Hakim Ziyech. It's quite inconsistent with his performances. But then I saw a statistic that it was we had 79% of the ball, possession, which is our highest since April 2018, which is, 79% away from home is huge. So, that's something that we should, consider. And then at the end of the day, another clean sheet, a 3-0 win. So it was all around quite a good performance, and I think we'll talk more about it in a while. But Reece James, I think, is absolutely fantastic. If you're basing this on form, like we've spoken about Mendy in the past, but he's by far the best right back in the world right now. I'd say levels above Trent at the moment, levels above Hakimi, levels above Wan-Bissaka. It was a brilliant performance. I think he had 86 touches of the ball, and the vast majority of those touches actually came in the Newcastle half. So I think Tuchel's halftime talk said, I want, the wing backs to push up higher up the pitch. It was what we saw with Chilwell and Reece James. And I thought Tuchel also did fantastically to bring on Loftus-Cheek and Barkley when we needed them, because they did have an impact on the game and they kind of contributed to the Reece James goals. So all in all, a great performance.
Yeah, I have to echo everything you just said, because I think we said before the game that we were going to win, but it was probably going to be a strange game, obviously because of Newcastle. I felt they sat back a lot in the first half, and at times obviously made it difficult for us to score. But I think as the game progressed, you always kind of understood that there might be, a Chelsea goal coming. I didn't think they could sustain that sort of defensive, sort of sitting back and playing behind the ball, getting to 11 men behind the ball. That kind of tactic was never going to work for 90 minutes. But I slightly agree with you in terms of Ziyech, but I wanted to ask you around our defense as well. What was your thoughts on them?
If I'm completely honest, they didn't have much to do during the game. They kind of everything they were thrown at, they dealt with it really well. I thought Thiago Silva, Rudiger, and Christensen were very, very solid. For any kind of British fan who watches Match of the Day, I think Ian Wright, Alan Shearer, and I think it was Gary Lineker, they covered it perfectly. It's just Newcastle's tactic was just, as soon as they had the ball, they'd pass it back to Carl Darlow, their goalkeeper, who would just lob it up the pitch to Rudiger, to Silva, to Christensen, and it was just a comfortable, ball to deal with. And then once one of those three centre backs would get the ball, they would just, Chelsea would play it from the back again. So it's kind of like they found it very, very hard to break down our defence. And I think they only had one shot on target, Newcastle, which came, I think, quite late on in the second half. So I think, Silva, Christensen and Rudiger had a very comfortable 90 minutes all around.
Yeah, definitely. It was perfect game. Obviously, results went our way, but I wanted to talk to you around Havertz, who is obviously playing that sort of false nine because of Lukaku being injured. But I thought he had another brilliant game. I think, he's almost coming into his own sort of element in terms of what he needs to do as a player. Obviously, he was criticised at times last season alongside Werner as well for not maybe playing as the way that we wanted him to. But I think he's coming into his own little game. He's finding the right pockets of space, which is what we need him to do. He does a lot of the things off the ball that not necessarily he gets credited for or people praise him for, but a lot of that opens up the space for the wingers or the guys in midfield as well. But even to win that penalty, I thought was brilliant. He's definitely coming on now.
Definitely. I think what we get with Havertz as a false nine over Lukaku is Lukaku is more of a target man. We'll see. I think it was in that Brentford game the amount of times we tried to get the ball to Lukaku from the defense. Just a long ball up the pitch, and Lukaku would try to hold it. At times it worked, at times it didn't. But with Havertz, it's a lot more fluid. I feel like, as you mentioned, he'll create space for the wing backs, create space for whoever's behind him, whether it's Lukaku, whether it's Ziyech, Hudson-Odoi, Barkley, Loftus-Cheek in the second half. And then he did brilliantly to win that penalty. It was a great through ball from Barkley, and he kind of took it to the side. And not all strikers would be able to control the ball like he did, but also be able to round the keeper like he did. It was like Fernando Torres style at the new camp, and it was fantastic. So I think goals might not be coming his way at the moment. He is scoring occasionally, but I think, like Werner, which we saw last season, we have to credit him for everything he's doing off the ball as well.
And you mentioned Reece James before. World class he is, man. I mean, I think a lot of people, I don't know what it is about Chelsea players, but and Thomas Tuchel as well, but they never really get the they're not mentioned in certain conversations. And we've seen that with when we spoke about Mendy previously around Ballon d'Or, but Reece James has got to be, I'm not saying he's better than Trent. I'm not saying he's miles ahead of Trent at all. I'm not saying that, but the amount of praise last season, and I think the season before the Euros, that Trent was getting around, number of assists and, his attacking play, and, he can't defend. But Reece James can do all of those things. He's scoring goals, which he's adding to his game now, which, he potentially has to do that if he wants to be classed as the best in the world. But defensively, he's brilliant. Attacking, he's brilliant. I can't really remember a game where I've looked and thought, let's hook off Reece James, or, we don't need Reece James in this game. He very rarely puts a foot wrong defensively as well. So it's not a bad shout, is it? We're best in the world. You mentioned Hakimi, Trent, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who they're not playing anything better than Reece James at the moment.
Yeah, no, I mean, I mentioned before he's levels above Trent. I think that's based on current form. I do think Trent is an excellent footballer as well. Let me just clarify that. But Reece James is absolutely fantastic, as you mentioned, not just his defensive ability, but also, going forward. And when I was seeing that a lot more at the moment with his, him playing right wing back over right back, which he was playing under Frank Lampard in that position. I just feel like the right wing back position just suits him so well. He has that freedom to, go up the pitch, contribute with crosses, contribute with shots, contribute with assists. And he was absolutely fantastic against Newcastle, and even against Norwich. That that chip finish he scored against Norwich was a striker's finish. And, I think left foot, right foot against Newcastle for both of his goals. As I mentioned before when I spoke, 86 touches of the ball. And I think about, over 50 or 60 of those came in the Newcastle half. He was absolutely fantastic. And I think at Newcastle, at Wigan, when he was on loan at Wigan, he played a few games as a midfielder. He has that in his locker, to play as a midfielder. And I know we've got plenty of depth in midfield, but should we need that option maybe one day to play a Reece James at midfield? I think like Zuma played there in the League Cup final against Spurs. I definitely back him in midfield for maybe a cup game or something. So he's honestly a fantastic player. And as you mentioned, maybe he's not getting the world-class label that some other players are getting because he plays for Chelsea. But I think it's about time rival fans open their eyes and realise this player is very, very good. Just how like Jorginho and Kante deserve that Ballon d'Or this year. I think we need to start to wake up and realise that.
Yeah, and let's just move on to Billy Gilmour, another player who I think we need to mention. He's not currently playing at the moment for Norwich, but why do you think that is? Why do you think he's not getting the game time at the moment?
I would not be able to tell you. I think it's just Daniel Farke being quite stubborn. Maybe already kind of thinking about the championship next season or the second half of the season. And I think, his excuse is that we're not here to develop players from other clubs, whether that's a dig at, not wanting to play loan players, or whether that's, just he in his eyes, Billy Gilmour's not good enough. But you'd have to be quite silly to see that Billy Gilmour's not good enough, because with the way that Norwich are playing, they could easily, Billy Gilmour would help them pick up a couple of points at the moment. We saw that, his Champions League, he played in the Champions League last season. He played in the Euros. He was man of the match against England in that 0-0 draw at Wembley. He's got bags of experience, despite his age. When I say bags of experience, it's at the highest level. And I don't know, I'm a bit lost at why Daniel Farke's not playing him. It could almost save Norwich from relegation, maybe by giving him more game time. And as it is right now, they're losing every single game, so they've almost got nothing to lose. Whether he's on loan, whether he belongs to another club, he's got nothing to lose. But I think should it continue like this, and I think there were conversations between the two of them at Stamford Bridge last week, or with the higher leaders of the clubs, he could be recalled in January, which would make sense. Whether we keep him in the squad or loan him back out, I don't know, but I think that's the sensible option right now.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to. It doesn't make sense to have a player on loan. You're sitting rock bottom of the Premier League. You haven't got a win all season. Like you've just mentioned, he's a player that can change games. And even going back to their game at the weekend against Leeds, they're 2-1 down. Maybe bring him on, and give Leeds something to think about. But I don't think he's played since September, I believe, something like that. September,
Yeah, I think it was.
September. So
He hasn't played at Carrow Road since the Norwich Liverpool game on the opening day. So I think that's what I read. So
yeah, for me personally, I think recall him. I know I think Everton to you last night, but we also mentioned Palace, maybe a Brighton, that kind of team. But there's also the option of bringing him in and embedding him into a very jam-packed couple of months coming up for Chelsea as well, because again we've got the Club World Cup coming up as well. I think the African Cup of Nations has now been cancelled or been postponed for a period of time, so obviously that means that we'll keep Mendy in our aspects, and I'm assuming Hakim Ziyech wasn't going to go anyway because of the issues that he's got with Morocco at the moment. But just having an extra player in that sort of that time in that period where it's busy, December, January, you've got some key games coming up. Maybe bring him in and use him as a part player. As much as it's not, I don't necessarily see the understanding of sending him to Norwich to sit on the bench when he can do that at Chelsea and he can train with the higher caliber of players, which in the long run is going to benefit him more as well. Whether there's something that's gone on, maybe with Daniel Farke and Billy Gilmour, the club, I don't know. It just seems very odd that you've got a player who is definitely better than the midfielders that they've got on Norwich at the moment, and that's no disrespect to them, but he's come there for a reason, because why would you get someone on loan to not... It's not... I don't think it's about the development. I don't think, for me, I think that's such a strange statement to come out with, because yes, part of your role is to develop a player. That's all your players, regardless of whether they're owned by Norwich or they've come in on loan. But he's a player that can change games, and I've watched him for, like you said, for Scotland, when he's had opportunity to play for Chelsea as well. He's done that, so I just think it's a weird one. I'd recall him, and I said Everton. I still think that's a really good shout. I think they need someone in midfield. I think you mentioned Tom Davies yesterday. I think Billy Gilmour would push him aside, and he'd make that that step up at Everton as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I find it really odd. I'm 80, maybe 90% certain we'll recall him in January, because Tuchel's already kind of been asked that question already around, what does he think around Daniel Farke not playing him? The fact that that's been batted around in press conferences already tells you that there might be some sort of discussions between the two clubs that's already been had. So recall him, keep him, or send him onto a club that will get the benefits out of him. I think we mentioned Palace, but Connor Gallagher, again, another player who is doing, well, Patrick Vieira is definitely getting the best out of him anyway. But what's your thoughts on Connor Gallagher, who I think he's scored 4 goals now while on loan at Palace? Obviously scored a brilliant one against Man City at the weekend. But what's your thoughts on his development at Crystal Palace at the moment?
Well, this is just almost like a big middle finger up at Daniel Farke. Like, we're not here to develop, players from other clubs. Well, look at Conor Gallagher shining at Crystal Palace and starting every game for Patrick Vieira. Fantastic player. He's only 21 years old, and every time I watch him, he impresses me even more. Match of the day pundits always praise him as well, which is great to see. And he was pivotal in that victory at the Etihad on Saturday. I think he assisted Zaha for the opener, and then he scored the last goal. And he just looks so sharp on the ball. He looks confident for his age, which is something we're starting to see with Mount. And Mount never really got... We have to remember, he never got a loan to the Premier League before, breaking into the Chelsea team. Whereas Gallagher's now had 2. I think he went on loan to the Championship to Charlton and Swansea, and then now he was at West Brom last season, where he only got 1 or 2 goals, I think. Whereas now he's matched that tally easily, being at Crystal Palace. But I think we mentioned what we had our Crystal Palace friend, back in the summer after we reviewed the Chelsea Crystal Palace game, and he was really excited for Gallagher. He was thanking us for him and Guehi. And now you can see why, because I think, he's absolutely fantastic. And Patrick Vieira, I think I wasn't too sure. I was a bit on the fence before whether he was the right manager for his development. But now I'm actually confident that the two of them will kind of, they'll go hand in hand with each other. And I'm really excited actually to see him for the rest of the season. But also I'm a bit thinking, for the future ahead, what's going to happen next season? Is it going to be another loan to Palace? Is it going to be a permanent move to Palace? Is he going to come back to Chelsea and break into the team? We maybe challenge someone like Loftus-Cheek or Mount for, the starting position. So there's a lot of questions as a Chelsea fan we have to ask. And we have this type of player now that can break into the team. But at the same time, I do think that Tuchel's the manager that will give, a player like that, should he get him back in pre-season, summer 2022, and see his abilities and, and his quality, that maybe he will want to, have him cement a position in the starting 11. Same thing with maybe an Armando Broja, and same thing we saw with Chalobah last season. So there's a lot of kind of youth qualities, that are out on loan at the moment, including Gilmour, that I think could easily be playing for Chelsea first team football.
It's going to be interesting because I feel like something's going to have to give, and I feel like we're talking about the centre back issue again with Tomori going to AC Milan and Zuma going to West Ham. I think something's going to have to give because we are almost overcrowded in midfield for players. When you think about it, does Ross Barkley need to leave, or it's a shame for him to leave because he's coming to some form. I mean, I was reading this morning some fans don't feel like he's doing as much as he can for Chelsea, but I disagree with that. I think he's given an opportunity, he's getting this opportunity, he's taken them, and he's doing really well. But does that? I don't want that to be at the expense of. I think I've said this before, at the expense of a Connor Gallagher or a Billy Gilmour. Saul Niguez is there. I'm sure Tuchel's looking at that now and thinking, was it the right choice to bring him in when we've got two good players that we could potentially use on loan in that sort of position as well. So, I think if the way I see it going, I think one of the two out of Gilmour and Gallagher will either be loaned out again next season or potentially a permanent move, like you say. I could see Gallagher staying at Palace, but being on a permanent basis. And it's sad to kind of see that because he's definitely got bags of talent, but does he want to come back and go back on loan after playing regular first team football for Crystal Palace as well? That's the question I suppose he's got to have to ask himself. But I just can't see him coming back and playing second fiddle to someone at Chelsea when he's proven already now that he's a quality Premier League player and he's going to want to play week in, week out. And can Chelsea guarantee that? Probably not. There's too many players in that position, so it's going to be a shame if we lose him. But I understand why we'd lose him as well. I think he's a brilliant. His movement is just. He reminds me of, not to compare him with anyone, but he's just definitely someone who I could see going on and, getting, 10 or 11, 15 goals a season because he's that kind of player. He gets forward. He's not scared to take players on as well, which is, for his age, the experience that he's had at a Premier League level, taking away the West Brom, because I really count that. But in terms of what he's doing at Palace, he's definitely got a bright future ahead of him.
Definitely. And like you mentioned, I think it's a choice of whether it's going to be Gilmour or Gallagher coming back to Chelsea next season. It'll be hard to have both, especially if we make the Saul Niguez move permanent, which is quite reassuring to know that it's not an obligation to buy. It's an option to buy. I still think we haven't seen the best of Saul Niguez yet, and with all the congested game, busy months coming up with fixtures, I think we'll see more of it. And we did see what he's capable of doing against Southampton in the Cup.
Yeah.
So we're almost spoiled for choices with midfield, both players that currently belong to Chelsea, but also players, that are on loan or out on loan. So it's going to be an interesting summer for Tuchel. But what I do like with him, I think he made, in terms of transfer business last summer, the business was spot on. Keeping Chalobah, I think, made a lot of sense. At the time, loaning Gilmour to Norwich made a lot of sense. Gallagher to Palace made a lot of sense. Broja to Southampton too. So I think maybe just the Livramento making that permanent was, a bit of a shame, but I think that's his decision rather than Tuchel's. So I think, I'm confident that Tuchel will have another brilliant summer next year and make the right choices with our transfer market.
Yeah, I trust him. I trust him
I trust him.
completely. He's not really given me any reason to doubt anything that he's done whilst he's been at the club. Obviously, we sort of spoke about Tomori, but like you just mentioned, Chalobah's come in and he's done for me. He's done just as good as a job. Same with Malang Sarr. It's a bit sort of question mark around him, but I've been impressed when he's played. So it's it's gonna be difficult, I think, to keep all these players happy because, as I've said before, we've got that many good players that could easily start for us. It's just you can only pick 11 out of that 23. So it's going to be interesting. But I hope we keep him. I'd love to see Connor Gallagher, getting a regular run out for Chelsea. I think he can definitely do that. But on the flip side, so can Billy Gilmour. But I'm pretty sure we'll recall Gilmour. I can't see Gilmour staying at Norwich. It just doesn't. Something's gone on, whether it's between the manager or the two clubs, but something's gone on that just doesn't sit right with
Mhm.
me anyway as a fan. I think he should be arguably one of the first names on that team sheet for Norwich. And
Because isn't Brandon Williams getting game time from Man U, and he's on loan as well? So
it
Daniel
doesn't make sense.
Fox, it doesn't make sense. No,
Yeah.
it's,
So
it's silly though because he could literally help Gilmore could help him pick up points and be out of that relegation zone had he played a sensible amount of games and minutes since the start of the season.
yeah. I don't like to normally say, I can't wait to see a team get relegated, but I'll be honest, Norwich fans, if you ever listen to this, I think, it's one of those things where you've got the golden ticket sitting in your lap, but you just don't want to use it. And he's that good of a player. He will get you points, whether he scores or he assists or he just changes the game. And we've seen that so many times for Chelsea, as you mentioned, for Scotland as well. But I just don't get it. I really
Mhm.
don't. So Norwich, good luck in the Championship. You're going to need it. So let's move on to Champions League. Malmo away. Give us your thoughts. What's your thoughts?
I wish I was on a plane to Copenhagen right now. Yeah, I think I messaged you on Friday because I've got friends going. 'Cause, for those who don't know where Malmo is located, it's about a 40-minute train ride from Copenhagen. So all the Chelsea fans are flying to Copenhagen and then going to Malmo for the game. Then going back to Copenhagen to hopefully celebrate.
Yeah.
I've got some friends who are going to the game. They think they flew today or they're flying tomorrow morning, and they asked me if I wanted to join, and it was just too late to get a ticket by then. And I've got so many annual leave days I need to take as well. So I'm gutted. I'm gutted. I know. And
Oh no.
then the next one's Zenit in December. It's going to be probably snowing and really cold for that one. So I
Yeah.
wish I wish I made the Malmo
The
and
Malmo.
Copenhagen trip. But I'm excited. It's a good game. Probably another thing I should mention is every time I have travelled for a European match, we've drawn or lost. So maybe I'll
Oh,
be
so
a
it's probably a good job that you're
maybe
here.
it's a good. I'm like, yeah, I'm not a good bit of luck for Chelsea when traveling. So, but then again, Malmo, we should be beating them regardless if I'm there or not. So,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm confident. I think we saw, Malmo's performance at Stamford Bridge 2 weeks ago. They're not great, let's face it. And I think they don't have much to play for now. I think they've lost all three of their games, rock bottom of the group. We've rotated a fair bit with the injuries we've had recently, but I think we can allow ourselves to rotate even more tomorrow. I think, even bring in players like Malang Sarr. I think Barkley deserves another start for, the impacts he had in the Newcastle game. I'd even play Kepa. I definitely think it's a good game for Kepa. It's a early start at 5:45 British time. So I think, if we can get the 3 points and, get a bit closer to Juventus and then hopefully hope that they Zenit get a result against them at 8 o'clock, then that'd be fantastic. But in terms of actually analysing any of the Malmo players, I don't know them too well, so I'm not able to do that. But I think it's a game we should be winning quite comfortably and keeping another clean sheet. But then, it could be one of those type of stadiums with quite an intimidating atmosphere. So maybe there could be a bit of nerviness for some players that don't play too regularly. So there could be sign of maybe conceding a goal, but with the way we're playing, with kind of the stability in defence, I still back ourselves to get a clean sheet and score at least 3 or 4 again.
yeah. I think I gave Malmo a bit too much credit last time we played them. I know they're top of their league, or they were. I think they still are in their domestic league, but I think. Yeah, I think we've got enough in there to deal with them. I don't think Thomas Tuchel's going to tweak that squad too much. I think looking at the table, I think obviously we're second on 6 points, but we do play Zenit. as you mentioned as well, and then we've got Juventus, I think, on the 23rd. So we're six, and we kind of need to make sure we get another 3 points, I think, in this game. And I think Tuchel would like to have that reassurance behind him and hope that Juventus can beat Zenit as well. That kind of gives us a bit more of a gap and a bit more of a leeway going into those two games. And I think if we were to drop points now, even if we were to draw, and Zenit get a win against Juventus, which is very unlikely, but it could happen, then it kind of puts a bit more pressure on those two games at the end. And I think he'll probably like to use this game as almost as a beating. He wants to make sure that it's not as close as we're looking for a winner in the 80th minute, and we're all hands on deck. I think we want to try and make sure that this game's put to bed early. Maybe bring on a Barkley, like you mentioned, or I don't know, take off Reece James and bring on Hudson-Odoi in that position, or Aspie, someone else in that position. But I just think he'll want to make sure that this game's put to bed early, and that it's not, we're not squeaky bum time at 85 minutes hoping that we can get like a last minute goal. So I'd like to see changes, of course, because I think we've got Burnley at the weekend, and I think that's going to be a tough game as well. I know they're struggling in the league, but
they're showing some form now. They're showing some
yeah,
form. They beat Brentford
yeah.
at the weekend, so I think it's
And
almost
convincingly
bad
as
time.
well.
Yeah, I think that Cornet guy they bought from Lyon is looking very, very decent. But we'll
Yeah,
preview them after the Malmo game, I'm sure.
yeah. So I'm sort of thinking to myself, obviously we know Havertz will probably play. We've got no choice. But I think in terms of that, maybe give Mason out. Obviously missing out on the game against Newcastle, just to give him a bit of a run out. If we're winning, bring him off. 60 minutes into the game, keep him fresh for Burnley. But I'm thinking 3-0, 4-0. I can't see them scoring. They were awful. I think they didn't have a shot on target when they came to the bridge, or they might have had one shot on target, I think. So I just can't see them doing it. I really can't. I might be wrong. We might lose, but I'm gonna go 4-0. I'm gonna go 4-0.
Yeah, I think you mentioned you wanting to play maybe our best 11 to get a beating and be in a comfortable position, but then I'm just still thinking of that game at Stamford Bridge when we lost Lukaku and Werner.
Yeah.
So it's kind of Tuchel might be thinking, do I play my strongest 11 and just cross my fingers that we don't get any injuries, or do I kind of play those players that maybe won't play as often, and hopefully we still get kind of a comfortable win, which I still think we're capable of doing. Playing a Saunagas, a Barkley, a Malang Sarr, I think those are players that could easily help us get a clean sheet and a comfortable win. So I'm going to go 3-0 Chelsea. I think, we'll almost match the performance that we at Stamford Bridge, but just concede score one less goal because it's away from home and, maybe a bit of fatigue from the travel. But yeah, it's going to be a comfortable win and a clean sheet again, I reckon.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it's an early kickoff. It's 5:45 UK time as well. So, which I hate as well. I hate when we're on early. Again, it messes up the evening. If we lose, which we won't, but if we did, I can't watch my 8 o'clock kickoffs then because I'm just not in the mood for it. But I think we'll win. I think I'm confident. I agree with you. I think it'd be World War III if we lost. I think we can't really afford to lose to Malmo. They're a team that we should be convincingly beaten. I think we've shown that we've got that sort of depth in the squad as well. And I said that to you offline. I think when we found out Mason Mount was playing against Newcastle, the squad depth should get us through these kind of games. And I do agree with you. Playing a Sal Niguez or a Malang Sarr, those kind of players. Of course, you want to play them, but I think back to the Carabao Cup games as well, and how kind of, not that we struggled, but we didn't look like we were going to score. You look at Southampton. It's things like that kind of worries me. And I think from what I've noticed of Tuchel so far is he's not concerned about the opponents. He just wants to win. He doesn't really care if it's a lower league team in the FA Cup. I'd imagine to still potentially put out a very strong squad. He might have a few the youngsters. I think in the Carabao Cup there was two youngsters on the bench, so I think he'll do that, but only if we're convincingly winning. If we're winning 4-0 and it's half time, I'm sure you'll see some youngsters maybe come on. But if it's looking 0-0 and it's 70 minutes on the clock, I think he'll be, he won't be happy. So I think we need to make sure we put the game to bed early and just come out second half and play a bit of freestyle football with them.
Yeah.
Get the Olays going, and
it's
yeah,
it's five substitutions in the Champions League as well, which will favour us because we have that depth and we have
yeah.
probably better quality squad, much better quality squad than Malmo. So if we can mean, resting some players or bringing some better players onto the pitch if we need, then that will definitely favour us having those five substitutions available.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So we're gonna go 3-0, Theo. I'm gonna go 4-0. I think we're gonna thrash them. I think we're gonna show them what we're made of. But I didn't want to talk about him, but I do want to ask you your thoughts on um, previous Chelsea manager Antonio Conte, who looks set to be the next Tottenham manager. From what I'm reading, 18 months initial sort of contract. He's been promised, I think, about 150 million to spend in January, with the option to hopefully buy 3 or 4 players for Spurs. Before we wrap up, let's end it on a low, seeing as we've been talking on a high for the last 30 minutes. But what's your thoughts about another ex Chelsea manager, obviously Jose, previous to that as well, going there? So what's your thoughts on Conte going to Spurs?
It's annoying. It's frustrating because as Chelsea fans, more than anyone, we know what he's capable of doing with. I want to say an average squad, but a squad that's kind of had a difficult previous season, and he's capable of turning things around just with 1 or 2 signings and change of formation. It's because when Mourinho went to Man U, it was just horrible seeing him, in the Man U touchline with the trackie and all that. And same when he went to Spurs after, and it's going to be the same with Conte now at Spurs. I've always loved him. I always thought he should have stayed a cut longer, but obviously he's more of a 2-season manager at clubs. So I don't expect him to be at Spurs come maybe a couple of summers after the World Cup but I think Spurs are getting a great manager. That's all I can say. I think he will sign some players in January. I think Kane will be happier playing better football as well under him. I still don't think they have the centre back quality maybe to play free at the back. I don't think Dyer, Romero, and Sanchez are world class centre backs to be in a back three on their own. Maybe Taganga will come in, play a bit of a hybrid between right wing
Yeah.
back and maybe centre back. But no, I think he's a fantastic manager. Happy to have him back in the Premier League, I suppose, because I do love Conte. But that's all I can say.
Yeah, he's definitely world class still. He's one of those managers that can, turn shit into gold, to use that phrase. But he's a really good manager. I agree with you. That Spurs aren't a bad team. On paper they have cracks in the team. Obviously, you just spoke about defense, but going forward, looking at Lucas Moura at the weekend, who's arguably their best player, should never have been subbed off, and Kane, Son, and Ndombele sort of coming into a bit of form as well. So I think he'll get the best out of those type of players. I think he'll definitely assess. Obviously, he likes his 5 at the back, so I think he'll definitely assess the centre backs. He'll make that probably priority number 1 if he comes in. But I agree with you. It's a shame because just like Jose, it was painful for me to, like you said, to see him go to United, and I didn't really mind him going to Spurs because I
No.
knew it was never going to work. It was just never. The two, Daniel Levy and Jose was never going to work, and I kind of feel like Conte, unless he's given the freedom to almost do what he needs to do, and to just be left alone to do the business, the day-to-day running of the team itself, and not get interference, I think that's going to be the big stumbling block. If that starts happening, which seems to happen with all the managers at Tottenham, Conte doesn't stand for it. He doesn't need to be at Spurs. I think that's another thing as well. If there's another big club, you look at like a Barcelona, who I think they can obviously appoint Xavi, or they might have already done that. But you look at those kind of clubs, and there will be another manager, a big club, who will go. So as soon as that happens, if there's rumblings at Spurs, he'll be the first one to be pipped and to be taken away. So I'd also say I think he's got a lot of stuff in his contract if he does sign it, lots of clauses. I think he'll be, he's probably been guaranteed that he's actually allowed to spend money. He's been guaranteed a transfer budget. He's probably been guaranteed so many different things because obviously this deal was supposed to happen in the summer. I think he was one of the top appointments that they wanted. So it does appear that obviously something's happened in terms of their talking. They've obviously agreed something, but whatever they've agreed, I'm sure it's on Conte's terms, not Daniel Levy's.
Yeah, I can see him more walking away than getting sacked in a year or two. So I can
Yeah,
see Conte is quite stubborn. He's very strong-minded. So I think it's going to be a short-term success for Tottenham, I think, rather than long-term success. But I can see them. I hate saying this, but they will win a trophy maybe this season or next season. It pains me to say as a Chelsea fan, but I just know how good Conte is, and
yeah.
if he gets the players he wants in January or next summer, then it's going to be short-term success for Tottenham for sure.
We'll have to see. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. I mean, the deal's not actually done yet, so I think they've offered him the 18 months, so we could all fall through. We've seen it before with Spurs. It's a Spurs way of doing things, messing things up. So, yeah, fingers crossed that we can, that we can see that happen. To be honest, as a Chelsea fan, but yeah, it's going to be interesting bringing it back to Chelsea. It's going to be an interesting week. We were obviously on a high from Newcastle, St James's Park, going into the game against Malmo, and then we will be talking about Burnley in our next episode. But it's going to be an interesting week. Theo, you said 3-0. Are you
Yeah.
going to go for any goal scorers?
I never get the goal scorers right at the moment. I predicted Christensen earlier in the season, and then he scored a couple games later. So let me go for Christensen again at the score, I think. And then let me go with Barkley, and let's go with Havertz.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
free.
going to
Yeah.
go. I'm going to go 2 for Havertz, and I reckon. I reckon the defender's going to score. I think we're going to get a set piece. So I might go. No, should I go? I'll go with Christensen. Christensen or Rudiger. I think depending on who plays. Maybe Mason Mount if he starts as well. I think we'll get our 4 goals and clean sheet Mendy as well. I think we'll put Mendy, not Kepa, in goal. I think we'll get clean sheet. Either way, we should get a clean sheet. So Kepa or Mendy, do your job. But as always, guys, you can follow us on Twitter and YouTube. Search for us From the Shed End, and also on Instagram at From the Shed End with underscores between each of the words on Instagram as well. We're also on YouTube, so subscribe, give us a comment, a like, all of that stuff as well. Let us know your thoughts on, obviously, Antonio Conte, if he does take the job at Spurs. What's your thoughts as Chelsea fans? Are you happy? You better not be, but if you are, let us know your thoughts. Obviously, Reece James, is he world class? Is he one of the world class right backs? We think so, but if you disagree, let us know as well. Newcastle, what do you think about Newcastle? Give us your thoughts on that. And Malmo, big game tomorrow, 5:45. I think we said 5:45 p.m. UK time. As always, this has been From the Shed End. So, Theo, as always, thanks for joining me. It's been a pleasure. We love doing this every week. We will be back later this week, hopefully, to do the Burnley preview as well. Big game coming up there. We can hopefully go 6 points clear against Liverpool if they drop more points. I think they've got a tough game this weekend. I can't remember who it is, but they've definitely got. I think it's West Ham. They've got West Ham this weekend, so big game. We might be 6 points clear at the weekend, so we'll definitely be smiling after that if we can get 6 points clear. So this has been From the Shed End, episode 33 of From the Shed End. Theo, thanks for joining me.
Thanks.
Until next time, we'll be back.